Hey everyone, today we are going to be doing another magazine torture test. If you saw my first one and my last one, for what it's worth at this point, it was with the Lancer L5 magazines. Now I used this specific translucent tan one, and really other than these little tiny holes here, it would almost be hard to tell that this mag has been torture tested. It stood up exceptionally well, which honestly I was expecting, but it did outperform some of my expectations, and it did kind of disappoint me in that it shed rounds every time. So I learned a lot from that last test, and it kind of inspired me to test some other magazines on the market. And for this video, it was actually, I guess you could say, sponsored by one of my fellow YouTubers who has the channel RageQuit003. If you guys probably have seen him in my comment section, we kind of troll each other back and forth, just having a good time with each other. But he was very kind and offered to send me some Series 2 Hexmags. So he sent me 2 of these, and he also sent me 2 more magazines that I'll probably be testing next week. So big thanks to RageQuit for sponsoring this video, essentially by ordering these magazines for me. As far as the testing goes for today, I'm going to be running it through the same rifle, using the same exact ammunition that I did last time, which once again is the fiocchi 55 grain full metal jacket stuff that I've run thousands of rounds without any issues. So again, just like last time, I know the rifle and the ammo are good to go, so we're going to be trying to isolate as much as we can these magazines in the testing. I'm going to be running it through the same exact parameters as the Lancer mags, and we'll hopefully continue on those testing protocol for the for all of the magazine torture tests that I do in the future. Now right away I want to get some biases out of the way, just in the interest of full disclosure. Part of the reason I wanted to test Hex mags after doing the Lancer mags is I love the Lancer mags. I've never had an issue with them, and again, as you saw in the torture test I did of these, they performed really well, which is exactly what I was expecting. The Hex mags are pretty much on the polar opposite end of the spectrum, with the exception of companies like ProMag. These are some of the lowest on the totem pole magazines, in my opinion, based off of my personal experience of these magazines in classes that I've been both a part of and classes that I've helped instruct, as well as some other professionals and friends of mine in the industry who have had similar experiences with these. So I've never been a huge fan of these Hex mags. Unless you're an Instagrammer who needs good pictures, I've never thought that there was a really good use for these. So I just want to let you know about those feelings right off the bat. I'm going to be trying to do this as empirically as possible, so regardless of my personal feelings, I'll run it as much as I can the exact same way I did the Lancer mags, and we'll see how they hold up. One other thing I think is worth mentioning is there was a post done on the firearm blog, I think like 8 or 9 months ago, where Nathaniel on there, if you guys have pretty much read any the firearm blog post, it's probably been him. He's done excellent articles in the past. He seems to be a very objective individual writing these posts, but he did one that caught my eye that had to do with Hexmag, and it had to do with the now owner of it basically forcing his brother out of the company, even though that brother is the one who actually designed and for all intents and purposes invented these magazines, and that, you know, they're now making plenty of money off of. So I'll have a link to that article below. I encourage you to read it, but that mixed in with the other experiences I've had with these magazines, again, has been the reason why I never recommend these to people to buy. But again, we'll see how these run. But again, I also thought it was worth you guys knowing what my biases were against these mags before we even begin. Again, those are just my opinion, and we'll see as empirically as we can how well these things run. Now, one thing I want to say really quick before I actually get into the testing of these, I don't know how well it's coming across on camera, but it's really hazy out here today. And so for those of you living in Oregon, you know, but maybe those of you who don't live here may not know, we've been having a lot of wildfires this summer. And so I really want to take this opportunity to thank any of the men and women who are currently out there fighting those wildland fires. I was very briefly a volunteer firefighter before joining the military, and during those 3.5 years I maybe was involved in like 2 really small wildland fires, and so I have just the tip of the iceberg experience to know how miserable it can be fighting those wildland fires. It's dirty, it's hot, it's sweaty, it's gross, and can be exceptionally dangerous, and we've had people who've lost their lives doing that here in the state. So before I get too far in the testing of this, I really want wanted to thank all the men and women once again who are fighting those fires, for giving that sacrifice, doing what you guys are doing. You know, if it wasn't for you guys, there'd be some pretty terrible stuff going on. And so thank you again to those of you doing that. With that out of the way, what I'm going to go ahead and do is cut open this package. We're going to load it up with 30 rounds of the Fiocchi 55 grain ammo and do a quick mag dump just to make sure that this thing feeds reliably before we get too far in the video. And if it doesn't, Rage Quit did also send me an extra mag. So if this one fails right away, then we'll have that second one to go to. And if that fails right away, well then this will be a pretty short video. At least other than this long-winded introduction. So with that said, let's go ahead and load up this mag and run it through my SBR here. All right, so we have this Series 2 Hexmag loaded up with 30 rounds. Put it into this SBR. Again, running the 55 grain Fiocchi ammo. Let's see if we can get through a full mag without any issues. Should be a pretty easy start. Okay, so we made it the first 30 rounds. Simple enough. Let's go ahead and pick up with the water test. So just like last time, I've got about 2 liters of water here. It's bottled water. This is the same container I used last time, so there might be a couple specks of dirt floating in it. So I apologize about that, but as near as makes no difference. This is just regular bottled water. Again, about 2 liters or 4 water bottles. I've got it submerged in here with 10 rounds, just like last time, and I've gotten it as many of the bubbles out as I can. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take it out, immediately put it into my rifle, shoot the 10 rounds, and hopefully everything should go well. So let's see how this thing will do. All right, so let's go ahead and get this water a little bit dirtier. All right, so once again, just like last time, we got about 14 ounces of dirt here from the same exact spot I got it from for the last test. Just gonna pour it in here. Gonna pour it in here, get it nice and dissolved in here as much as I can. Again, it's just got the dirt. It's got what was dry grass before pouring it in here, rocks, just a little bit of everything that you can expect here in this specific part of Oregon. Again, this should replicate what you could possibly experience in the field, more or less. It's going to be a little wetter than, you know, a straight up mud puddle, but should be pretty typical of any sort of dirty stream or anything like that. So I'm going to load up this magazine with 20 rounds, let it soak in here for a little bit, and then we'll see if it runs. All right, so now I got 20 rounds of that Fiocchi 55 grain ammo. You did not make sure I don't drop that. I get this stirred up once again without trying to spill too much onto the tables here. And try to keep as much of those stuff in there as possible. Just gonna set it in here. Again, try to get some of those air bubbles out and really try to get some of that nastiness in the magazine. Again, the reason I did more rounds than with just the regular water was because I figure water should be a non-factor. With this, it's allowing stuff to get in between those rounds and hopefully cause it to lock up on each other going up. If it passes this, we'll do this once again, but let a little bit more of it dry on the inside of it and see if that happens. But before we get too far ahead of myself, let me reposition the camera so you can see this thing come straight out of the dirt and into the rifle. As similar to the Lancer mag as I can. All right. So I did that just fine. So again, like last time, I'm going to put 15 rounds in here, get it dirty, let that dirt dry in there, and we'll see if that causes it to choke at all. All right, so again, got 15 rounds. Gonna try to get a bunch of dirt and gunk in here, a bunch of little particulates, and then set it out in the sun to dry. Again, what my goal is here is to see if when some of the water burns off, it leaves that dirt in between the rounds and causes some real grittiness that will prevent it from feeding. So now that we got stuff in here, again, it's pretty much in the mid to high 80s today. So I'm just gonna toss it in the grass, let it dry out there, and hopefully continue our testing. Didn't shed any rounds either, so that's a good sign. All right, so we let this Hexmag sit out for approximately about the same amount of time as the Lancer mag. You can definitely tell things have dried onto there, although there's still a little bit of moisture dripping out the base plate. Of course, it's going to stop once I want to show you. But again, I'll hold this close to the mic so you can hopefully hear the grittiness of it. So hopefully you're able to get get a feeling for it. I don't know if that'll translate to camera well, but definitely a little bit more gritty than it was when it was all wet. So let me go ahead, get this in, and see if it will run these 15 rounds more or less without any issues. Oh, okay. So we have what looks like a failure to go into full battery here, if you can see that. I'm going to go ahead and just whack it. So lock the bolt back. Yeah, so that was a failure to go into battery. It was not a failure to extract. This is the round that it kicked out. As you can tell, that round is pretty dirty. Let me go ahead, put the rest of the magazine in, see if it'll continue running. Okay, so just that one failure. Just to show you this round a little closer, it is pretty dirty, but there's no, dimpling or anything on it that would change the case dimensions enough. So that is one failure. Again, this is going to be a little bit less of one of the empirical tests because it's hard to gauge the exact amount of dryness or amount of dirt in there. But the Lancer mag did not have any issues. We have one failure to go into full battery with this one, or failure to feed, however you want to, I guess it's failure to go into full battery. But yeah, so that's worth noting. All right, so next up we have the drop test. Once again, I have this loaded up to 20 rounds, just like the Lancer mag. I'm going to be dropping this in different orientations to see how it handles it, just to kind of improve on how I did it last time. I also have a GoPro up here to get a little bit of a closer up shot just in case anything happens, and a little bit higher frame rate so we can slow things down if we have to. Hopefully we don't have to, but we'll go ahead and find out. So first up, we're going to be dropping it with the floor plate going straight down. Again, going to be dropping it from about shoulder height, and once again, it only has 20 rounds in it, so it's not fully loaded, but it does have some weight to it. So we'll see how well it handles being dropped. Okay, so shed one round. You can see there's definitely some blemishing on that back corner. Nothing too crazy. Doubt that that would impede function whatsoever. Let's go ahead, load this one round back in. Grab my notes just so I can make sure I do it in the same order I did last time. So next one is going to be with the spine of the magazine facing down, the rounds facing straight up, once again from shoulder height. Okay. So that was an improvement over the Lancer mag. Did not shed any rounds, and it looks like maybe it might have rotated because I really only see blemishing on this corner of the mag right here. Nothing too crazy. Let's go ahead and do the next one. Next one is going to be with the side down, rounds facing away from me. Going to try to hold it more or less in the center of gravity to increase the odds of it actually hitting as flat as possible. Once again, from about shoulder height. All right. So once again, no rounds were kicked out. That's a good thing. Just some more blemishing here towards the front corner up here. Again, nothing that looks like it would impede function whatsoever. So far, so good. Okay, so the next one I'm going to do is with the rounds facing straight down. So again, no rounds were kicked out, and it did seem to rotate, so it seems like we're just beating up this corner a little bit more, but again, not seeing any cracking so far at least, which takes us to the last test, which is going to be dropping it straight down on the feed lips. So shoulder height, straight down onto the feed lips. All right, again, no rounds were kicked out. We have a little bit of blemishing here on the top of the feed lips. Don't know how well you'll be able to see that kind of back in here. Honestly, it held up better than I was expecting. I expected there to be some cracking taking place. Again, it's worth mentioning this is a Series 2 magazine. I've heard these ones are supposed to be a little bit better, at least as far as how the material they're made out of. And it seemed to hold up to that well. Let's go ahead and shoot all 20 rounds and see how it works. Oh man, so that did not want to feed. Let me go ahead and try it one more time. It was getting caught up. This thing, all I did to it after the last test was clean it. So it should be relatively well lubed. Didn't really want to go, but it did look, it was kind of sluggish, but it did go into full battery. Let's see how it does with 20 rounds. Okay, well, other than that first one, which really didn't want to feed, it did cycle all 20 rounds. That means we get to go to one of the more fun parts, in my opinion. So let me go ahead and load this thing back up. All right, so last time I did this, it seemed like my RAM charger got more comments than the magazines did. So we'll see if that carries on for this time. Got my 89 RAM charger here. Like I said last time, it weighs just over 1.5 tons. Got this loaded up with 20 rounds. Got a nice concrete slab here so that there's no give on the other side of this mag. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna run it over a couple times, over and back with it perpendicular, and then over and back with a parallel. I think that this might be the hardest test for this, but we'll see how it holds up. So I'm actually pretty impressed at how well this thing stood up to getting run over. I honestly expected it to kind of crack in some places, but I don't see that. You can definitely tell the side that was concrete down, it definitely got scuffed up all along the edge here. It did kick out 3 rounds. I'll have to look back at the footage, but it looked like they all came out as I was, or it sounded like from the driver's seat that they all came out as I was driving over it. I don't see the same extent of denting as I did with the Lancer mags, with the exception of maybe this one round. You can kind of see some indentations there. So just like last time, I'm going to load these back in and see if they feed. Also worth noting, because of its lack of wanting to go into full battery, one thing I did, which I didn't have to do for the Lancer mag test, was I sprayed the inside just a little bit with some of the Strike Industries Anti-Venom XPLC, which is the stuff that I've been cleaning it with. I did clean it between this time and last time pretty thoroughly, so that shouldn't be the issue, but just for the sake of giving this thing the benefit of the doubt, I did clean it up a little bit. So we will see if it was the lubricant's fault or lack thereof, which that should have been, or if it was the magazine just not wanting to feed those rounds. So we'll go ahead and load those rounds in. Ooh, I don't know if you saw that. Let's try that one more time. It's definitely being really sluggish to feed. So to demonstrate that one more time, I'm going to use the ping pong paddle here. Okay, didn't do it that time. Let's see if it feeds all 20 rounds. All right. Failure to feed. Oh, actually, it looks like a double feed. Let me go ahead and grab my camera and take a high-res picture of this, just so you can see, but that bolt is trying to pick up that bottom round. It's really trying to feed both of them into that same hole. Let me grab my camera real quick. All right, so now that I got those pictures taken, let me go ahead and try to fix this. Again, it's worth noting, in case you didn't see the test I did with the Lancer mags, I never had a single issue, whether that be double feed, failure to feed, or anything like that. With the exception of those rounds which were dented, which did affect that case dimension, which would cause it to not want to feed. Let's see if it'll feed. Okay, let's try to finish this mag. Okay, so I fed the rest of them, yeah. A double feed is something I haven't had in a really long time because I've been just using the Lancer mags and Magpul mags. So, interesting. There's one last thing that I want to do to this, which if you saw my last video, you know what that is. And it's the part that I think is the most fun. So let me go ahead and get that set up. Okay, so the last test I'm going to be doing involves shooting the magazine. So I have one of my Lancer mags here, because that's what I had with me, with one round of that 55 grain fiocchi ammo, same ones that we've been shooting all day. I got the magazine set up with my GoPro on it, and I unfortunately have to get low like this in order to make sure my round impacts safely into the berm. Let's see if this one feeds with any issues. Nope. Surprise, surprise. Anyway, let's go ahead and shoot that magazine. Okay, I'm anxious to see what happened. Well, we did something that we were not able to do with the testing that we did with both the shooting the Lancer mag twice last time as well as shooting that Magpul mag. Looks like we caught the spring here. You can see the spring guts sticking out the top, or sticking out the side. Now, there theoretically is still spring tension on the follower. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load maybe 10 rounds, basically just to make sure the follower doesn't go past that point, and see if it'll feed those rounds. I'm anticipating it probably will. Maybe not without any issues, considering it is being given us issues without the spring being shot through. But let's see. I'm kind of curious for myself. All right, so we got the magazine with that spring sticking out. I was able to load 10 rounds in there. I might have been able to fit in more, but really I just wanted to make sure I didn't get it too close to where that entrance and exit wound were, which I should add. So that's the entrance right there, and that's our exit. The material itself did hold up pretty well, which again, I wasn't expecting. So let's see, using the ping pong paddle, theoretically the full force of the buffer spray, see if it'll chamber, and it did. Good sign so far. And let's shoot the 10 rounds. All right. Interesting. One thing worth noting, it doesn't want to drop free. That's not terribly uncommon with dirty mags. But just worth noting, I can guarantee the Lancer mag would not have at this point either, but just since it was very blatantly apparent to me right now, I figured I'd mention that. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and try to wrap up my thoughts as best I can about these Hexmags. Like I said at the beginning, I've never been a big fan of these because of the reliability issues, which you saw a couple of in this video. You saw a couple failures to feed, and we saw that one double feed. which are malfunctions that I have not seen in thousands of rounds, or at least I should say the double feed is not an issue I've seen in thousands of rounds with those Lancer magazines. So that is worth noting. And I can even say that I was speaking to someone who, just for their sake, I'll probably maintain their anonymity, but they are a instructor in our industry. And he is very outspoken against these mags. He has his own hashtag even, so some of you may be able to figure out who that is. But when I was asking him about what he thought would happen in this test, he said that they're not fragile, so he didn't expect it to crack or blow apart or anything. His issue has always been their feeding, and that is the issues where we ran into, because it handled all the other tests relatively well. It handled being dropped without cracking. It handled being run over without cracking, which honestly surprised me. I expected that to do more. Other than it hitting the spring, it handled being shot very well, and you saw it feed those 10 rounds. So the durability of the magazines certainly doesn't seem to be in question, at least not for me. However, the reliability of the function, whether or not it'll actually feed those rounds into it, seems to be the biggest issue. And again, these are the Series 2 mags, which I have been told by everyone are a lot better than the original series, or the original Gen 1 series. But you know, nonetheless, we did have those issues, which again, I have not had in the other magazines. Now, again, I've only tested one other magazine through this process, the Lancer mags, without any of those types of failures. Again, other than the ones where they were dimpled, which changed the case dimension so it wouldn't chamber properly. I will be testing more magazines out here. Next up on the list are some Magpul Gen 3 mags. I believe they're the style that the military just picked up, or the Marines just approved for use, I should say. It is worth noting that Rage Quit also provided those for me, so I appreciate that once again. Really quick, let me go ahead and just try to disassemble this magazine just to see really what happened in there. Simple to take apart, as you can see, but the spring doesn't want to come out because it is sticking out the side of the magazine here. You can see broke just like that, and we'll see if we can even get the upper portion out here. Did bend it significantly, but again, it did seem to function. I don't know how long it would do that or how reliably it would do that, but it did do that. You can probably expect what it looks like in there. It's probably too dark for you to see, but you know, just that coiled up spring, and honestly, it's basically acting like a new floor plate. The fact that this spring is sticking out, as long as this part doesn't get cut off or it doesn't blow open the side of the magazine, it basically is acting like a new floor plate. So the magazine will, or the follower will go down to where that spot is. So it's still theoretically usable. It's just whether or not it'll be reliable is the question. So that really kind of brings me to what my actual final thoughts are on this magazine, and that is I still don't recommend them. Again, it handled being beat up pretty well, but they just don't seem to function reliably, even in pristine condition or semi-pristine condition. We ran into those issues, and those are the same issues that I've seen pretty much since I first became familiar with these Hexmags. I will say they look good, so that's why you see them on Instagram all the time, you know, for what that's worth. But if you actually care about your gun running, then I personally would recommend you stay away from the Hexmags. And many, like I said, many of my friends in the industry, as well as people who are instructors in the industry, feel the same way. And that really should tell you something. But, you know, you saw the results yourself. You can make that determination for yourself. Again, functioned fine with the Lancer mags. Didn't seem to like this too much. Only had a couple issues, but that's a couple issues too many in my opinion. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, go ahead and throw those in the comment section down below. Like I said, I'll have that link that the firearm blog, that article that Nathaniel posted. I think it's worth a read. If you are interested in these hex mags, you know, you can make your own determination how relevant that story is. But I think it can potentially be telling, these are my opinions, it can be telling of some of the mindset of people in charge at that company. If you thought this was unfair to Hexmag, go ahead and let me know that as well. But again, I try to run it through exactly the same testing that I did with the Lancer mags, and I'll continue testing with future magazines with the Magpul mags. I want to get my hands on some of the Daniel Defense magazines. Again, someone will probably have to buy them for me, but the Troy mags, because I refuse to buy anything from Troy myself. If you guys seen my other videos, you know that by now. I thought these results were interesting. I was definitely surprised in some ways, but you know, I'll let you make up your own mind. So anyway, with all that said, I've probably been rambling on enough anyway. As always, I hope you're able to get something out of this video, and I really appreciate you watching.